Well, good evening, this is Houndog Steve, wishing you a very pleasant evening and welcome back to the channel. And this evening what I'd like to talk about is a fairly serious subject, and that is the food shock that is about to wash over the whole planet. And this is basically everywhere you look there is some kind of food crisis taking place. They're all weather related, whether it be by drought, by flooding, by unseasonal weather events, whatever it is. Everywhere you look, crop production is down. And what's worse, especially in America, the early floods that they had in the Midwest destroyed a lot of the strategic food storage. So that is a really big issue now, because so your food storage, your strategic storage down, and you've got no replacement coming in this year. And they're predicting that next year is going to be very much like this year. And of course, when you get into China, China is the biggie, because just the sheer number of people there, and they have had two things happen. They had the spring and the fall armyworm, which has absolutely decimated their corn crops. They also had wet weather and flooding, which has been a real issue, but also they have had the pig plague or African swine fever, and they have lost basically about 50% of their pig herd across China, and that is actually equal to 1/4 of the planet's hog population. Staggering amount of hogs that have gone down. Well, China has bought a company called Smithfield Farms there in North Carolina. Now, Smithfield Farms was basically supplying the US with about 32-33% of its pork, and China was supposed to not send all of their pork to the China, but still maintain, supplying the American markets. Well, now, because they're in a state of panic, all that pork, 32% of America's pork supply is now going offshore to China. And of course, China are absolutely scared to death of food issues. Food and water, these are two primary. So when you get right down to it, you can live without an awful lot, but food and water and shelter are your three primaries. And this is quite often why you see that revolutions are started by food riots or sudden food increases. And again, another very populous place, India. They have had a failure in their onion crop. The onions are so popular. Every dish basically has onions in them in India, and so they have temporarily suspended exports until that situation is stabilized. And because a lot of these food products are basics, corn, for example, goes into an awful lot of things. It goes into fuel, ethanol, the cornstarch goes into all kinds of cooked and prepared foods, modified corn syrup. This is how many candies are sweetened. Look on the back and look at the ingredients, and you will see corn syrup is in every form of candy. So this means that all of these other goods are going to go up in price. Candies, prepared foods, beef. Cattle are fed corn to finish them off and to fatten them up, and so beef is going to rise in price. Grain is fed to chickens, so chicken produce will go up in price. So you can see how this is basically going to put its feelers into every aspect. And of course, the worst thing is that all of these products are listed on the futures market. And I'll tell you, when these vultures start speculating on futures, you can add another 10 to 15% just from speculation alone. And of course, what else is going on? There is a propane shortage in the Midwest for grain drying. And again, you see, that shortage is not isolated. Those farmers will be putting pressure on the suppliers to get propane. They will be going into the spot market. The spot market will respond to this, and prices will go up just as we're heading into winter. And this is high heating cost time for people, especially in Canada, North America. And our food costs in Canada, vegetables are up 18% alone, and they are continuing to spike quite quickly. And this is just going to intensify. And if we get another long protracted spring, as we well, that's what they're forecasting now, it will not be an early end of winter, Most people weren't planting till well into June. And with the early snows, frosts and winter weather coming in early in the Midwest, a lot of crops are still in the fields. And you'll see by some of the articles that I'm going to show you now just exactly how protected and how worldwide this is. So anyway, let's flip over those articles and I'll come back and we'll do a quick wrap up. Okie dokie, here we go. Food prices to skyrocket in UK as floods ruin crops, winter vegetables and delay planting. UK food prices are expected to rise in the new year. The latest floods in northern England have decimated crops, winter vegetables such as potatoes, cauliflowers and cabbages, as well as delayed planting. 2019 wasn't a good year for the food industry, and it seems it will get even worse in 2020. Flooding along the Missouri River has stretched on over 8 months now, and there is no end in sight. Meanwhile, the latest floods in northern UK have ruined crops, winter vegetables and delayed planting. That flood analysts say food prices are set to skyrocket and the trend has already begun. Official data released on Friday revealed a great deal of uncertainty around the fate of a tenth of the country's potato crop as farmers count the costs of the deluge that has overwhelmed parts of South Yorkshire, Lincolnshire and the Midlands. And this from Farmers Weekly, how the drought has affected potato yields and quality. The eating potato crop is forecast to be nearly 20% smaller than last year in northwest Europe because of the summer drought, with tuber size and quality also suffering. Some farmers face the challenge of meeting contract tonnages, whilst others are set to benefit from a stronger free trade price. So there you go, opposite problem. Too much rain and now too little rain. This from AgFacts, harvest complication, propane demands outstrip supply. As if the 2019 growing season didn't have enough weather challenges, corn harvest has come to a complete halt for some farmers as propane for crop drying has been hard to secure. Increased demand nationwide due to extremely cold weather is limiting supplies available for drying crops. And of course this is what I said, if you've got a shortage here, it is going to put pressure on prices everywhere, and they are forecasting maybe not a brutally cold winter, but a long winter going into April, May and possibly June of next year. This is India, the news today. Soaring Indian onion prices raise the risk of political fallout. New Delhi, November 15th. Onion prices in India have soared to eye-watering heights, leading to worries about food inflation and consumer unrest as climate change hits production of one of the country's most important vegetables, according to the Financial Times. Extreme heat earlier this year, followed by excess rainfall from the annual monsoon, has led to a drastic fall in production in India's key growing areas. Okay, this from Zero Hedge. China's food inflation skyrocketing. This is primarily on what is now rampant pork hyperinflation due to China's never-ending fight with African swine fever, i.e. pig Ebola, as pork inflation is up a stunning 103.3% year-over-year in October from 69.3% year-over-year in September. Meanwhile, real unadjusted pork prices have risen even higher as wholesale pork prices have soared by a stunning 173% year-to-date. And there you go. I mean, this is stunning to have your prime ingredient, your prime protein, virtually double in price. This is not good. Successful farming. US corn yields are rolling in. Farmers say the crops are mostly not as bountiful as a year ago. Mark Hobrock, Western Grain Marketing General Manager, says that farmers in his area along the Illinois River of west central Illinois can't wait to have 2019 in their rear-view mirrors. I'm ready to get the 2019 season behind us. Let's look forward to 2020, Hobrock says. This has been an unprecedented growing season. Last fall we had trouble getting ammonia applied, we have a lot of corn that wasn't planted until after June 1st, and we had big time floods with the Illinois River staying above flood stage for over 120 days. The growing season started extremely wet, but between June 20th and early August only a quarter of an inch of rain fell in central and west central Illinois. August was cool. These crops are really showing the roller coaster ride this crop went on this year, Hobrook says. Okay, so this is from the Electroverse. Harvest from hell. 2.7 million acres of Canadian canola left frozen in the field. Heavy and persistent snow during 2019's harvest season have left several million acres of canola, renowned as Canada's most profitable crop, buried until the spring of 2020, reports Reuters. So this was an interesting chart on this site, and you can see NASA's prediction, solar cycle 25, which is right here. Okay, and if you follow this little dotted line right here, you can see that we are into the Dalton minimum level of sun flaring. Now the Dalton minimum, and I will link below a little documentary called Little Ice Age Big Chill, but the Dalton minimum was when we had Little House on the Prairie type winters. It was brutally cold, and they're talking in 400-year sunspot observations that we're going into another modern minimum, which will be like the Maunder minimum. These sun cycles occur on a regular basis, and so we're looking at, we're at 2020 right now. We might be pulling out of this about 2075. Okay, and this is the number of sunspots, and like I say, we're dropping down to around about 50 sunspots. 50 sunspots for the entire year. Okay, and so through a modern maximum, so through the heating that we've just had from 1950 to almost to 2000, we were at 250 sunspots per year. That is a significant drop, my friends, and so be prepared for cool weather, inclement weather, rain, and unpredictable polarization, from drought right the way through to hail, to freezing rain, to rain and flooding. It's going to be a wild roller coaster ride from here on in. This from the Toronto Sun. Cost of food, housing and gas rising fast. Experts say some of the basics, housing, food and energy, are going up at a rate that threatens to overwhelm household budgets. The results point to how much Canadians are under pressure financially, as Charbois said. Vegetables are up 18% year to year overall, and we're looking at increases in food prices of over 2.5%, which I think this is the kind of massaged figure here, because as they said, they have a food basket and they manipulate that food basket to keep these figures looking low. But this is what you're paying. This is your real cost out of pocket, 18% increase in vegetable prices this year. And here we are. On average, the Canadian household will spend anywhere between 10 to 15% of its budget on food. Food affordability was barely mentioned during this campaign, so absolutely, I think this is a disappointment. This from the Daily Mail. Christmas ham prices are set to soar by 60% due to a global pork shortage. And there you go. If that's happening in Australia, I will guarantee you it's going to be all around the world. The cost of pork could rise thanks to a surge in exports after African swine fever decimated pig herds across Europe and Asia, Victorian Farmers Federation Tim Kingsmer says. Okay, so here's a few little facts about African swine fever. It's untreatable. The infectious virus that affects domestic pigs, warthogs and bush pigs and kills within days. It can be spread when pigs eat infected meat products and through direct contact. Humans cannot be infected, but authorities predict the disease will eradicate up to a quarter of the global pig stocks and obliterate Asian piggeries. There is no vaccine or cure for the disease. There is estimated to be up to 24 million wild boars across Australia, sparking fears the disease could spread quickly if it gets into the wild. If a local outbreak occurred, it could cost the Australian pork industry $2 billion. And the way we move food and goods around the world today, it is only a matter of time before African swine fever reaches North America, Australia, South America, and then we won't be eating pork anymore. So what can you do about this? I'm not seeing a lot of this in the mainstream media, and so it is left to us independent broadcasters to bring you the news. But certainly if you are within earshot of this video, I will be starting to set aside some foodstuffs, some water, especially some dried goods. because they will last a long time. And rice, beans, that kind of stuff, they contain a lot of protein. Rice, brown rice, short grain brown rice, organic, is a whole food. You can actually live off brown rice alone. Now, of course, it won't be too tasty after about 2-3 weeks, but you can survive off it. But I would be stocking away things like grains, things that are going to be in short supply. Sweeteners. Buy your sweetness now. Buy some sugar. There's a sugar shortage. America is looking at importing from Mexico to fill the shortfall because of, again, rainy weather. The sugar beet crop was very, very poor this year, and so, like I say, you think of how many things sugar goes into. I would also be getting some grains that you can sprout, so that if greens happen to go through the roof, again, you can start sprouting your own greens. These will grow indoors, even in an east-facing window or a north-facing window and cloud cover. Those seeds will sprout, and you can get your protein, you can get all the enzymes that you need, and it will be just the same as eating lettuce or any other green food. And again, it may get a little tiring after a while. I personally like the taste. It's a very nutty kind of taste, but those are the kind of things that you want to have set aside now, because when this happens, everyone is going to get the same idea at the same time, and there is going to be one mad dash for the supermarkets. People they'll be buying anything and everything that's on the shelves. And I don't know about the rest of the world, but certainly Toronto, which is the largest big centre to my location, they have approximately 3 days to a week's worth of food in strategic supplies. So after a week, 2 weeks, if you have a situation where there's food shortages for 2 weeks, boy oh boy, it's going to be grim. So you want to start preparing now, and this really is a bit of an emergency call, because as you can see by the articles that I've just shown you, this is happening in real time. This is happening this year and going into next year. And as I say, they're predicting the same kind of spring, long, cold and wet, so you can expect the same kind of planting season. So think ahead, plan where you can put a small garden into your backyard if it's possible, a small greenhouse where you can grow hothouse stuff, and again, as I say, think of sprouting, things that you can get if you've got a nice south-facing window, grow some herbs, grow some wheatgrass. Wheatgrass is an unbelievable vitamin-rich substance, and you can juice that wheatgrass down. It grows in 7 days from planting. It is 6 or 7 inches high, and you get 2, 3, 4 trays of that going, and you start cutting that down, you juice it up with your brown rice. Like I say, it's not going to be the most wonderful and exciting diet, but between wheatgrass, short grain brown rice and sprouting, you could last a long, long time. And the thing is, you want to stay out of the fray. You do not want to be going down to that supermarket for any reason when there is any possibility of arguing and fighting over food, because it will erupt when people get desperate. That old saying, desperate people do desperate things. So please prepare yourself accordingly, and go off mainstream media and come onto channels like mine, because this is where you're going to hear this kind of stuff. The mainstream media will keep you willfully in the blind, and you'll walk into this with a blindfold on, and it's going to knock you for 6, I can assure you. So try and think ahead, do a little preparation now, and you will stave off some of the worst of what I think may happen over this winter time and going into next year. Okay, so if you've enjoyed this video, please comment, like and subscribe below, and in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we'll talk very, very shortly. See you now. Bye.